Hey flower friends, welcome to this week's DIY segment. It's really great to have you here. We're going to have a really fun week this week doing leaf manipulation and a little bit of lily grass loop. So I'm putting together a couple of leaf formats for you guys so you get to really kind of play around with those ideas and those concepts. So that being said, you are going to need to grab your stapler. Any stapler will do in your home. If you don't have one, you can also just always fold the leaves under and bind them with the bind wire. You should have received some bind wire in this week's kit. That's for tying this off and also making those great lily grass loops. You got your clippers handy. Make sure you have your jar of water. Now today we're going to be working with this great Monstera leaf. Now Monstera is a little bit more of a broad decorative leaf. It's something that we like to feature just a little bit, but then I also included these aspidistra leaves. Now the reason I do that is because I can get a little more bulk and volume out of aspidistra leaves, and this is where the leaf manipulation comes in, but they are far more cost effective in arrangements. So if I'm having like a really nice tropical look and I want it to be very full, then I have to do a mix, much like I do with my garden arrangements. I have to do a mix of leaves in order to get that same volume going. So we have our inexpensive leaf here with this aspidistra, and we have our more expensive Monstera leaf that we want to feature on top of that. So that'll just help us kind of bulk that together. Then we have this great lily grass. Now lily grass is something that is very easy to manipulate. You can see that it has two sides. There's a bright green side and a dark green side, and we really want to be using that dark green side out. So we're going to be making some lily grass loops. Now this provides a little bit of architecture to what we're doing today. So that's kind of a fun way to play with that and to get a little bit more play in your arranging. So for our floral elements today, the star of our show is this hydrangea. This is a blue South American hydrangea. This also comes in white and purple. The reason we use a lot of South American hydrangeas is because they're a little more hardy than our Dutch counterparts. So the Dutch hydrangeas can be a little more full and petally and just larger heads, but they don't last as long. So this is more cost effective. You get about the same bulk, but you get more longevity out of a South American hydrangea than you do with a Dutch hydrangea. So that's why I kind of go that route with those. Then next up we have our roses. We're just gonna be using some Playa Blanca roses today. This is a hybrid rose. It was bred between a tea rose and a standard rose. So it has a little bit more of a special petaling inside. You can sort of see that the petals it's like a higher petal count, and they are a little more furly. They have a little bit of curl to them. So they have just a little bit more depth and texture inside the rose. So it's a really nice rose to work with. And then for our linear element today, we have this blue Belladonna Delphinium, right? So this is the more cost effective of all the Delphiniums. We have Pacific Hybrid, but this Belladonna is the petite stuff. Now this is kind of large for Belladonna. So we're gonna take off some of these bottom blooms just to make it a little more scalable towards what we're doing today. So we're gonna come together and prep our materials and get going. I can't wait to do this. All right, so to get started, let's go ahead and prepare or prep all of our floral stems so that they're ready to go, because what we want to do is we want to assemble this in our hands, and then we will hand tie that just a little bit. So what we're going to do is I'm going to clean off any extra leaves here off of this hydrangea just by gently pulling them back over themselves. There's a few leaves right up here underneath, and those don't bother me so much. I don't need to clean them all off. Just if any are sticking out, I just do go ahead and take those off. So we just throw those in the garbage bowl there. Now with the roses, it doesn't look very thorny, but I'm going to be pretty careful. I'm going to strip away these leaves as well, not running my hand down the stem just in case there is a thorn. And as you know, if there are any unsightly guard petals, go ahead and take those off at this time, maybe 2, possibly 3 at the most, right? So this rose is really pretty when it opens up, and hopefully you can see how like petally these beautiful, beautiful Playa Blancas are. So I am just going to go ahead and continue to remove the foliage from my roses and take off those guard petals just because we want this to perform really nicely and open up. So what I'm doing here is I'm just sort of gently opening that rose just because I want it to take out a little more space. So I give them a helping hand, especially in event design work and wedding work. We want to see roses in their full capacity, which is why we do things like reflex them and develop them. By develop, I mean we usually leave those roses for event work out of the cooler to open for about 4 days. That's about how long it takes for a rose to get to its max potential. Day 5 and day 6 they're pretty much done. So around day 4 is when you should be seeing your roses at their very best, if they're nice and strong. And by strong, I mean if they're good, hardy, and fresh. You know, it's just kind of what we look for in a rose. Now here with this, I have some laterals. I'm just gonna go ahead and remove these. I know that I just wanna use this as a linear thrusted element in this arrangement. So I'm just gonna size it up a little bit by taking off some of these lower laterals and lower blooms. So this should be approximately 10 inches of bloom right there at the top, maybe 8 to 10 inches. So we have this nice blue lateral there, and I'm just gonna do that with these other ones as well. I know it's really hard to pick off gorgeous blooms, and if you wanna leave them a little bit longer, that's up to you. I know it's sometimes just pains you to take off these beautiful blooms, but if you want to hang on to these, they dry really nicely. You can put them in a potpourri, or you can have just like a little bottle or something that has small notions in it, you know, next to your bedside table or something, you know, so you don't have to waste them. You can still use them, but if you want to leave them on, I know it's very hard to take off beautiful blooms from these gorgeous foliages and florals. So, but here we go. So we've got all my floral stems nice and clean. They're all prepped and ready to go, ready to work with. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move on to my aspidistra leaves. So here you can see I've got 3 leaves in this kit. What I want to do is I really wanna make that nice fold, that accordion fold that we do with this aspidistra. Now remember, we're gonna staple this to manipulate it. Now, if you don't have a staple gun handy, you can just fold it back over itself like this and wire it right around there, and then you still get a nice loop curl. But if you do have that stapler handy, you can still get that nice tip there and this sort of accordion shape. And what I'm going to do with this stapler is I'm just going to staple right over the rib. Now remember, that rib on the back side of this, that's the strong part of the leaf. So this rib here is what we really need to have the staple go around so it doesn't rip out of that leaf. Now I'm going to do this one in a curl, so I just want to wrap it around itself. You can see I'm just curling it up like a nice cannoli, right? So we have this beautiful curl there. Same thing, I'm going to slip my stapler in. I'm going to go ahead, and I am out of staples. Look at that. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue to leaf manipulate with my bind wire like I told you guys. So if you don't have a stapler, this is your chance to really get on that. So here we go. I'm just going to take this bind wire, wrap it around there, and then I'm sealing that off. See, it all works out. We can keep the train moving. So here we go. I'm going to do the other one just the same as that. Clip off a little bit of that excess, and then that way I still have something that has a little bulk and a little shape, and it can totally work in my situation. So if you can sort of design with different styles of leaf manipulation, if you sort of pinch it, you can see there, and if I can grab that with a wire, then I can still get that nice curl out the side. So I'm just going to take another piece of my bind wire here, just a little piece. It doesn't take very much, maybe 4 inches, 3 or 4 inches, and that's just fine. So I'm just going to go ahead, grab that leaf around there, tie it off nice and tight so it doesn't come undone. Then that way I still have a nice shape to play with in my arrangement. Okay, so there we go. I've got my leaf manipulation done. Then next up, what I'm going to do, we're going to do lily grass loops today, guys. So oftentimes in the architecture of arranging, what we like to see is, like, if you take for instance this hydrangea head, we will sometimes have a nice grass loop that sort of arcs over that. So the way we do that really simply is we can just sort of take it and span the width over this hydrangea head. Now I can do that with multiple grass loops, and maybe then I can just sort of tie it, or you can tie them on one at a time. So what I'm doing is I'm just sort of holding them. I'm holding the grass here, making sure that I get this nice arc kind of going up and over my hydrangea in different angles. So I'm placing this one maybe at a slightly different angle than my other one. I'm sort of holding it on there with my thumb, and I'm bringing it around to the side there. Now you can see I have these really nice arcs going on. This provides some architecture. I can adjust these loops if I want to. You can see they're sort of just riding up and over that hydrangea. I'm gonna save this one to the side, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my bind wire here at this point, and I am just gonna wrap it around the stem of the hydrangea, locking those lily grass loops in place. So you can see I'm just sort of getting them attached to that hydrangea stem by wrapping this bind wire around and twisting it off like we do with all of our arranging. So the mechanics behind this is pretty much all that bind wire this week. So I have these lily grass loops. over my hydrangea, and that way I can see that that's already going to start to form the architecture of the whole arrangement. Now, lily grass loops as well, you can just take the loop, right, and you can hold the lily grass like this, and you can insert the loop like this individually into the arrangement. So you can go through and you can make little lily grass loops on your own, on each with each piece of grass on their own, and then you would have these loops to insert any place you like in the arrangement. So you can do it this way or you can do it this way. Either way works. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of demonstrate with having one of them sort of free out here and be able to use that in just a little bit. So now that our prep work is done there with our leaves, what I want to do is I want to start with this hydrangea. So try and find what looks like maybe the front side of the hydrangea, okay? So here's what we're looking for. We're looking for that space where the face is really bold, where you're getting a nice furl of these nice loop curls over there, and I think this right here is the front. So what I want to do is I'm just going to easily group my other florals around this. So what I want to do is in my hand, I'm going to add the rest of my stems. Let me just bring them into view there. So I'm just going to lay these roses right next to this hydrangea head. You can see what I'm doing here. I'm just going to make a nice grouping of 3 right there. 1, 2, 3. Next up, let's go ahead and just add in this Delphinium. Now when I'm making a grouped arrangement in my hand, I still want to see those angles. So you can see I have different angles going on here so that they're coming out at different sides of the arrangement. So I'm going to lay my Delphinium across here. Now, so often when we're talking about doing our insertions into the vase, we're talking about going in at that 45-degree angle. And you can see here in my hand, I'm still abiding by that. I'm still getting angles out of my stems in different directions. That way I'm still kind of creating that sort of nice pole-like teepee-esque structure that we can work with. This spiral is what really holds the arrangement in its shape. So I'm just going to continue to add the rest of my Delphinium. So you can see this is really starting to take shape as we're coming through here. Now, when I look at this from the top, here's what you're going to see. You're going to see this beautiful sort of the lily grass curls out the front of the arrangement. We've got this Delphinium here, this really nice rose on that side, and then I just need to add my leaves. So I'm just going to trim off. These stems are maybe just a little bit too long. I'm going to take a little bit of the length off so this is easier to sort of maneuver in my hand. So when I have this, I'm holding it, then I can sort of look for that shelf. So where do I want to add this last lily grass loop? I think right there along the side of these roses looks pretty good to me. So we get some shape out of all my different sides here, add some visual interest. But then what I want to do is this is the back of the arrangement. So we have this thrust kind of coming out the side. So I do want to place this monstera leaf right in that thrust. So you can see that's kind of moving out this direction. The thrust of this beautiful Delphinium is sort of following that line, but then I need to sort of support that just a little bit. So I'm going to do a little bit of a leaf collar underneath some of the other portions. So using my manipulated leaves, I'm just going to utilize one to support the back and bottom of that monstera leaf there. And then if I want to turn this, be sure you grip it, turn it, and re-grip it, all right? So if you want to see what's happening on the other side of your arrangement, I can see right here underneath this shelf of the hydrangea, I'm really going to want another leaf underneath there. So what you're ending up with is you're ending up with this beautiful architecture that is sort of providing you with this almost lily pad-esque look with a floral focus right in the center. It's some really interesting architecture there with those leaves. So that's what we're sort of going for this week. Then all you need to do is you haven't released your grip there. We're going to replace the grip of our finger and our thumb with that bind wire. So go ahead and leave a little extra there so you can tie it off at the end. Wrap it once, twice, give it a tug, 3 times around so you got that tension, right? Go ahead and clip off the excess of that bind wire. Twist to finish. So we're going to twist once, twice, just like a bread bag, a twisty tie. That's all we're doing. I'm going to take off some of that excess there, right? I'm going to fold that over so it's a little more inconspicuous and it's right there at the top. And then I'm able to sort of cut my stems to length, so the chop and drop. Now, here, what you want to examine is you can see some of these stems are up a little higher than some of the others, especially when it comes to this lily grass. Like the lily grass is riding a little high in this arrangement. So if I want to pull some of it down at this point, I can. Just be sure you're cutting those so that they can still drink water, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the length of my stems here and clip away so that I can drop it into the vessel. But then I'm also making sure that I'm getting up there and I'm cutting those lily grass stems so that they can drink as well. I can check the height of that. I can see I need to take off a little bit of length on these back stems by standing it next to the vase that I'm going to drop it into. Simply set those stems in that vase, drop it down, nestle it in place, and you have a beautiful architectural centerpiece that has a really nice modern kick to it with some visual interest and these great lily grass loops. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know you're really going to have some fun trying to get that lily grass to work. And don't worry, if you get a little frustrated, just keep going, keep trying different ways to tie them in. And like I said, if you need to do them individually, you can also do that. So try it a couple of different ways, but this way you get to see that beautiful, expensive monstera leaf, you know, that focal leaf that we wanted to really feature there. It's backed by some less expensive aspidistra leaves. You have the great floral groupings and clusters, lending to this modern look with a real nice modern flair of having this architecture of the lily grass loops. I love this arrangement. I think you're going to too, and I'll see you next week.